What's going on, folks? This is Colion Noir, and welcome to another episode of CN Live. And our guest today is going to be retired U.S. Army 1st SFOD Delta combat veteran. During his service, he helped design and develop several firearms, participated in special operations missions, and was a tactics and marksmanship instructor. Since his military service, he spent years in the firearms industry as a combat marksmanship instructor and industry consultant. Please welcome my guest and Master Sergeant Larry Vickers. What's going on, Larry?
Not much, brother. Thank you for having me.
Oh man, anytime. I've been wanting to have you for a while now. Definitely wanted to have you on Noir, but I know with your schedule, my schedule, it's all over the place.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, just for people who don't really know too much about you, which is kind of hard to believe nowadays, talk to me a little bit about your background and kind of how you got started doing what you do.
Well, it all started way back when I was a kid, and my dad gave me a .22 bolt-action rifle. And as bizarre as it sounds, that was it. I was hooked after that, and it just kind of grew.
How old were you?
Oh man, at that point, I would have to say probably 11 or 12 if I had to get. It was a single-shot bolt-action rifle, and that kind of got me hooked on guns, and it just kind of grew. Decided to go into the military in the Green Berets, special forces, as a light weapon specialist.
Okay.
And just over time, I've absorbed as much as I could, and it's just literally like planting the seed out in the yard. I mean, that tree grew. And I kind of carried that throughout my special operations career.
Gotcha. Now, for a lot of people, is it understood? Because I think for a lot of people, like when they hear about people who are in the military, they think that everyone who's in the military is like a hardcore gun nut.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, and is that actually the case?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No. It's like anything else. You get guys that are serious into skydiving.
Uh-huh.
You get guys that are serious into other types of activities, and I just happen to be a gun guy. Most guys liked guns, don't get me wrong, and most guys in special operations owned guns. But to say they were serious, hardcore gun guys, that was not really the case.
Gotcha. So do you think being in the military accelerated that, versus, or do you think you would inevitably end up here anyway, in terms of just your enthusiasm for firearms?
It absolutely accelerated it, because I had opportunities and there was doors opened for me that I would not normally have, and I took maximum advantage of it. So yeah, it threw fuel on the fire big time.
Gotcha. So you were also involved in pretty famous operation to rescue Kurt Muse. I wasn't sure if I was selling his last name right. Is it Muse or Mose?
It's Muse.
Muse.
Yeah,
okay.
It's Muse. Mm-hmm.
So during that operation, do you remember what gun you actually used?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, if you look it up, Bravo Company did a little, highlighted some carbines. It probably goes back a couple years ago now, with like a picture and a write-up.
Yeah.
And it's the so-called Scud Hunter carbine is exactly the same carbine I used on Modelo Prison. Because you're only talking about, a year and a half separation. So yeah, it was a Colt Car 15. It was actually a Model 723, and interestingly enough, the gun is in my first, the Vickers Guide AR-15 book. The gun's in there.
It's in there, the one I just ordered.
Yeah, bingo, the one you just ordered.
So I watched a documentary about it. And I wanted to ask you, because I remember you telling me when you guys first made approach and you first landed, it was just constant shooting. And in my mind, because I'm not in any theater, I always wondered, what in your mind do you ever consider the idea of the reliability behind your platform? I mean, I'm pretty sure you do to some degree, but is it something that's even at the top of your mind whenever you're going in?
Not really, and I'll tell you why. Because we had shot so much with our service weapons up to that point, and we knew them so well, that if there was any questions to it or anything in the back of our mind that wouldn't have been kosher, the gun would have been swapped out, repaired, fixed. So no, that was really out of the equation. It was direct byproduct of the amount of training time and the amount of rounds we'd put down range, getting proficient with the weapon. Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's something for me that I always wondered, because I see what happens a lot of times, and I'm pretty sure you do too. I think a lot of people have a misconception about, I don't want to say misconception, but I've seen just about every gun have a stoppage of some sort.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And so it's for a lot of people, they get a stoppage and they're freaking, oh my God, what is wrong with my gun?
Yeah.
And me, I've shot so many guns now. When they get a stoppage, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, maybe a magazine, or maybe a round, or maybe it is the gun, and then just kind of keep it moving. So I've always wondered what kind of goes in your mind at that point.
Yeah, I mean, well, one, you obviously train for immediate action drills and malfunction drills. But you're right, and let me throw something by you. Do you think that's a phenomenon that you see with the video game crowd? Because, in video games, guns never malfunction.
Which is true.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that? That maybe the newer generation, in their mind, they've got this illusion that there's no malfunctions ever.
Yeah, you're right. What would be interesting, though, X Factor would be start including malfunctions in these video games.
Exactly. I'm surprised they haven't, to be honest with you. You have to go through a procedure to clear it and whatnot.
Yeah, I coupling that with, like, say, I saw this video and they were talking about how frustrating it is to shoot a first-person shooter in virtual reality. And so all you saw was this gun, and then they couldn't get the magazine inserted correctly and doing it over and over again. So I can only imagine trying to clear a malfunction with the controller.
Some kind of funky procedure to insert the mag.
So in that documentary, too, I noticed something that was mentioned. From landing and getting to them and getting them out was like 6 minutes. Yeah,
from when we landed to when they called for exfil, basically, we have him secure and we're ready to leave, was 6 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't know that till years later,
really?
Honestly.
So how did it feel in your mind? Time-wise, how did that feel? Did it feel longer? Did it feel shorter?
I would say it felt longer.
Yeah.
Looking back on it. If you would have asked me, how long do you think you're there? I would have said probably 15 minutes. I would have probably doubled the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in my mind's eye. Yeah.
Okay. So, so clearly you've made a progression from the military side to and becoming more of a TV personality. Your credentials, you have probably more credentials than just about anybody in the industry with respect to that, especially compared to someone like me who's just kind of pretty much a civilian, no military background. How was that transition? Was it something you always knew you were inevitably going to do, or did it just kind of happen to come into play?
It just kind of happened, to be honest with you. I had a lot of contacts in the firearms industry because I'd traveled a lot. I went to SHOT Show. I shot, IPSC and IDPA back in the day.
Okay.
And I just had a lot of contacts. And when I got out, I started training. Just the TV kind of found me. I didn't really go looking for it. It kind of came and found me. So honestly, it's just one of those things that kind of happened.
So was the transition difficult? Like, was it something I was like, oh God, I got to get used to this, or was it just kind of okay?
Well, the transition out of the military into the civilian sector, that definitely there was some bumps there. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think a lot of people underestimate the difficulties that come from that.
Absolutely. And for anybody that says it's not, honestly, for me, there's some bumps in the road.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the filming stuff to me was no big deal because I was used to teaching classes and being in front of, 15, 20 people, that I've never met before over a course of a weekend, and you get used to that. And honestly, that set me up for being able to film and all that, and it was no big deal. That personally, the filming part to me never really spooked me.
Yeah, I remember you made a video. It was called "Why I'm Fat," and so I don't want to talk about that as much as I want to talk about what a lot of people don't realize is when you are in front of the camera more, how you start to kind of pick out you almost become more insecure about little things that you see about yourself that most people don't ever see.
Spot on, 100% right. And then I'll run into all kinds of people who see me in a class and they go, "Oh man, you look great. Looks like you've dropped weight." It's like, no, you're used to seeing me. Yeah, you're used to seeing me on a camera.
Yeah.
And then, I agree with you 100%. You'll see a little thing or something. You're like, man, that does, you know what I mean?
And you kind of have to just deal with it.
Hypercritical. Yep,
absolutely. And and I've gotten it too. It's like, man, you need to stop eating, Colion. You're starting to put on a little weight. I'm like, it's the camera. And I used to laugh at women when they were like, the camera adds 10 pounds. The camera adds, and now I'm like, Damn, they're right.
It is spot on. It absolutely is spot on.
Absolutely.
I remember early on I saw myself and I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, there was no way. And then found out it's the camera and it was the lens and it was the angle, and you go, oh yeah, here we go.
Yep. There's like, if people who follow me on Instagram, they'll probably notice I've been working out more often. That's because I watched season 5. That's pretty much why. But we gotta go to a quick break real quick, and when we come back, we'll start talking about some of the consulting that you've done in the industry.
You got it, man. Sounds good.